All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Sophia. I'm on the marketing team at Vantage. And before we get started, I'm just going to give a quick intro into what we're doing here today and then also just go over a few quick housekeeping items. But we've been getting a ton on the Vantage side, a ton of questions from customers and from prospects on AI and FinOps, whether that's tracking your AI costs or how to incorporate AI into your FinOps workflows to just make them run better and work better and more efficiently. So we thought it would be a great idea to kick off a webinar series where we invite different customers each session to talk about what they're doing with AI and FinOps. So you all can learn about that. So today we're going to be kicking off with Boomi, a team that's just deeply, deeply knowledgeable about FinOps generally. And as you'll learn later, Will and Eric are just really on the cutting edge of applying AI to their FinOps workflows. So really excited about this conversation. Just in terms of a few housekeeping items, we are going to have a Q&A at the end. So if you have questions that you want Will, Eric, or Brooke to answer live, please just put those in the Q&A box. And then we'll also have the chat going as well. So feel free to just chat any questions, thoughts, remarks in there as well. And we will be sending this recording out hopefully tomorrow, just so that you have to share around and refer back to. But without further ado, I will kick it off to Brooke, who will intro the webinar and kick things off.
Thanks, Sophia. And just wanted to make sure we did hit record to start the recording.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Michelle asked in the chat, will this be recorded? Recorded? Yes, it will.
And it is recording.
Cool. Thank you. Great. So just a little bit of the agenda of what we'll cover today. I'll just give a brief intro to Vantage if you're not familiar, although I'm going to let the Boomi team do most of the talking today. We're going to get an intro from Will and Eric, a little bit of overview of their day-to-day, and then they're going to walk us through the tooling they've built on top of AI, some utilizing Vantage, some utilizing other tooling to help them in their FinOps day-to-day. And then, like we said, open it up to Q&A at the end. So feel free to type in the questions box throughout, and then I'll be asking the questions to Will and Eric at the end. Great. So my name is Brooke. I'm the CTO and co-founder here at Vantage, run our product design and engineering teams. Vantage is a cloud cost management platform. Since the beginning, we've invested a lot in APIs and our data layer and making sure our customers could get that data out of the platform and utilize it in third-party tooling or write their own scripts to build their own systems. And now with the paradigm shift to AI, it's become even more important. So the second half of last year, we invested in our MCP server, which allows the data that's in Vantage to be interacted with through an LLM like ChatGPT or Claude. And the Boomi team is going to walk us through how they're utilizing some of those tools to then build on top of and create processes internally to the team.
Hi, everybody. My name is Eric Mulartrick. I am the FinOps lead here at Boomi, and I've been in this particular role for like 6.5 years now. And just a little bit about what Boomi is. We are the leading integration and automation platform. And because of the connectivity that we have natively, you can build AI agents in our platform and connect them right into your business to help automate your business intelligently.
Good. And I, of course, am Will Carlson. I'm the FinOps engineer working hand in hand with both Eric and the rest of the engineering team to make sure that we have the initiatives moving that help further our FinOps practice. So, kind of a little bit of a primer here. Boomi is one of those organizations that we've been around for a long time. Eric is pretty well known to the FinOps organization. We have a fairly advanced FinOps practice. Now, I know if you've been to FinOps X, you have almost certainly heard JR say the phrase crawl, walk, run, followed shortly by there are no runners. I would say that, working with Boomi and a number of other organizations within the FinOps space over time, Boomi's pretty far advanced in their practice. So, we have a really extensive cloud profile across multiple different platforms, using almost any service that you could think of, and dozens of different teams that actually utilize those services, including a lot of overlap in teams creating stacks that are nearly identical but belonging to different teams. So part of that process, we've gone through our FinOps workflow, and we have essentially dealt with all the low-hanging fruit at this point. We have all of our reservations are fully covered, or all of our resources are fully covered by reservations where possible. We have, systems turning off on nights and weekends. We've really done all of the things that really get us past that crawl phase and really most of the walk phase as well. And so we got to this place where we are now focused on, well, where are all the different opportunities that we have to avoid cost? And almost all of those opportunities require a significant amount of additional lift in the form of, creating tickets with engineering teams, notifying them to specifically talk about individual resources or individual stacks. And again, when you have a platform that is quite as large as ours with across as many different teams as we do, we got to a point where we really started having to look towards automation for everything, because no human being can actually manage discovery and ticketing at this scale. We're not going to go through and evaluate thousands of resources across hundreds of stacks to figure out which ones, are over provisioned in X size or, don't meet a certain other criteria. So, very early on when I joined Boomi, we started really focusing on automation. And I think that one of the key things that we're going to go through, really key concepts that we're going to talk about, is how, we started with automation, but automation really wasn't enough. And we started looking towards using AI to sort of get us to the next level of that. And then in addition to that, the other key concept is just using AI in our day-to-day practice to really make our experience better as FinOps engineers and to help expand the FinOps capacities beyond just the FinOps team. So great. That's kind of what we're going to go over. I think we're going to kick it off with the very first item that we're going to discuss. So can you, next slide, please? So I expect a lot of people on the call are familiar with this. If you have spent any time working with RDS or OpenSearch or EKS, these are all managed services. Each one of them has a specific life cycle to how long it'll exist within a standard support. And after that standard support ends, that life cycle, or that they'll start incurring charges. Now, there's a lot of benefits to updating versions, but of course, one of the key benefits is, making sure that we're not incurring extended support charges for resources that really don't need to be at the version that they're at. Another key benefit, of course, is getting better security from updating resources. But as we went through this process, we started evaluating all of the different, we focused primarily on RDS and EKS initially, and we took a process where we automated all the data that we're getting from Vantage, which is collecting that information about what specific resources are currently in extended support versus what resources will soon be in extended support. Focusing on EKS and RDS, we built out an automation that wrote tickets to specific individual teams. Here are your resources that are currently in extended support. There are charges incurred with this. Also, there's additional security benefits that can be gained by getting up to the latest version. And then we posted those ticket links to their individual Slack channel. So we're taking all that information, condensing it, and bringing it specifically to the engineers where they actually live, which of course is Jira and Slack. And that was great. Initially that got us a really good experience, but within about 3 months, we started seeing that tickets were largely out of date. So different teams would move at different rates to correct individual resources. Like some of them within an individual ticket would get to a state where they had been moved up to the latest version and they were no longer incurring extended support. Other resources that were inside that same ticket were still incurring extended support because of legitimate business reasons. They couldn't update it because they had to make sure that XYZ service was still supported in the new version. So we're in this state where we've got all these tickets that are out of date, and this brought us to a place where we specifically started using AI to help us evaluate. So can you next slide, please? So this is an example of the tickets that are, some of the content that might be in a ticket. So we've got initially three specific values. You'll see there's production web, staging analytics, and then in the proposed information that's coming in, meaning these are all of the current resources that are referenced. There's production web cluster, staging analytics, but then in addition to that, there's a new one, which is reliability monitor cluster. And the dev microservices cluster that was in the original one is now gone. So meaning that's no longer current. They fixed it. It's not something that's reflected in the data that we're getting from Vantage about what is currently in extended support. So we had a couple of options in front of us. I mean, the first one that we could do was we could take this information and just completely rewrite the ticket, replace the entire content. But when we started looking at that, almost every ticket that we were generating, we were getting comments and feedback and updates within the ticket body itself. And if we just wiped the ticket body, all that data is gone. So we lose all the nuance for each individual specific resource. If they added a column to indicate which ones were done and which were not, we'd lose that data. So enter AI to the rescue. We are using AI. We're passing all this information that comes into the ticket into a specific Lambda instance that processes that data, hands it off to Bedrock, and says, here's all the incoming. Go get the information about what exists in the ticket and then compare the two of them. And what Bedrock is specifically doing is surgically evaluating the individual resources referenced and only modifying the content that is within that specific individual ticket. So this is something that I could personally do manually. I could go into each ticket and automatically, or like one at a time, look at that, compare the resources that are in there, and go through and remove anything that's not current, add anything that's new. I could do that, but it would take me an entire week to get that through, and we run these jobs, run this automation pretty much every week to evaluate all these things because, as you may be familiar, like EKS, for example, is on a really fast development cycle. What is current now may not be current 3 months from now. And generally speaking, the life cycle of EKS versions is usually about a year and 3 months to a year and 6 months before those versions actually move into extended support. So you have to keep on top of these things really aggressively to make sure that you're not incurring extended support charges that you just don't need. So
Sounds like a great use case for an AI agent, Will.
sure it does. Using AI in this instance to surgically update the body of the ticket just relating to the specific resources has been hugely helpful. And because of the way that we built the automation framework, we're able to do that same sort of thing for pretty much every type of automation ticket that we make. So we're passing all of these Jira tickets, or passing all of these updated ticket information directly to this AI to go through and do this type of surgical update for the resource list, just exclusively with those. And it's been great so far. We're getting getting some good feedback with the teams that we specifically referred to, especially the ones that reached out to us to say, hey, this is kind of annoying. We're getting notified about this every week. These resources were gone. So, yep.
Yeah, and obviously, like where we want the FinOps organization to be is embedding with each of the engineers and getting them to think proactively versus reactively responding to tickets, right? So what this has started to introduce is, hey, maybe I need to have a maintenance cycle for RDS. Maybe I need to have a maintenance cycle for EKS. So I stop getting blasted with tickets. And maybe I need to put that into our planning sessions for the next quarter. So that is now happening. And I'm actually pretty happy about that. So we don't have to bombard and hit up people and slap them with a stick that they're costing, $200 a month on extended support.
So, okay, next slide, please. So, one of the other initiatives that we're doing, is a fully agentic waste discovery. So, last year, the early part of last year, we had a lot of discussions around, again, getting back to that idea of like, we've dealt with all the low-hanging fruit. What else is still out there? And as we did evaluations on all the different services that we had, a lot of different things came up that as being potential opportunities for waste avoidance. But as we went through this, the information that we collected manually was more and more nuanced to the extent where, in order to do this sort of thing efficiently, in order to find out what waste is still out there and do this in an ongoing basis, we would have to actually have one person dedicated to just going out, evaluating what each individual services each team was using, then either through domain-specific knowledge or knowledge of what those services are, going and evaluating whether or not each resource under each of those services was efficient. There's no way that a human being could do this. There's no way that a team of human beings could efficiently do this. So enter AI. What we're doing right now is taking all the autonomous waste, or taking all of the teams, passing that team to a Bedrock instance, which spawns other Bedrock instances to evaluate each one of the individual services that are under that team, and then applies that own LLM's knowledge about what types of waste exist under those services to resource discovery to find out whether or not there are any opportunities for waste. This could be something like whether or not usage patterns. Is it a dev system that's on 24/7? Is it a resource that's not connected to any of the things that that particular type of resource is typically connected to? So, and then, is it significantly over provisioned? Doing all that information or collecting all that information, processing all that information, then handing it back to the original LLM saying, for this team, we found all these different particular opportunities for waste. And then that LLM goes and builds up a Slack message that matches a predefined format so that that individual team gets information, again, where they live in a format that's hopefully easily digestible and allows them to fairly quickly get a look into what particular opportunities for waste removal there are. So if you can go to the next slide, we'll get a little bit of an example of what that looks like. So this is, of course, an example of the type of information it's producing today. So, we've got a specific account, Waffle Compute Stack, what resource type it is. It's an EC2 instance. It's over provisioned. What identifiers there are, whether or not there are multiple different resources that match that criteria, what region they're in, what account it's in. So this is all the pertinent details that an engineer would need in order to take that information and run with it. If you can go to the next, there is another example. This will be EBS optimizing storage volumes. So again, each one of these opportunities is a thing that the LLM itself actually decided was out there based on the information that it already collected. So it's processing real data in real time and coming up with these suggestions automatically based off of all of the data that it's been trained on so far. So, and then the next slide, the final part about this, of course, is not just taking each of these different things, but presenting a plan to the end user. So the LLM, the original LLM actually goes through and says, okay, here is something to work on this week. Here's something to work on the next week. And by doing that, it gives those team leads an opportunity to say, this is something that we probably should address. We can do this quickly. We're not overwhelming them with a list of things to do right now. We're saying, here's what you want to look into for this specific opportunity right now. So.
Yeah, and I'm going to dive into anomalies in just a second, but I want to give you all something to take away with right now. If you want to start getting your hands dirty with AI on FinOps, I would look no further for the AWS folks out there to look at Kiro. You can use Kiro today. If you have the access that it needs, for example, read-only access to your accounts, you can have Kiro go and do investigations for you. I'll give you an example. We use a lot of what's called FSxN NetApp storage arrays that are out there. And I said, hey, Kiro, I'd like you to go look at all of the NetApp arrays that we have and do an analysis on the throughput that currently exists and the throughput that is currently configured within our infrastructure as code. And tell me over the last 30 days, what opportunities do we have to optimize the throughput within each of these arrays? and it will go off and build code and scripts and all that that you don't necessarily have to pay attention to. But in minutes, it will spit back information and data and say, here's my analysis. You should double check the analysis because I've definitely been trolled by Kiro before, as most recently as a couple days ago when it told me we had $1 million of EBS snapshots that were really dated that could be removed. And of course, I got all excited about that. And in reality, it had its pricing mechanism wrong. So yeah, it was actually like $3,000. So yeah, I got trolled. I ate the poison mushroom. I'm sure you've all seen that meme before. But yeah, Kiro can do investigations for you, and it's pretty darn good at doing it. You just got to make sure and keep it in check. The more context that it has, if you give it like access to MCP, which we're going to talk about in a moment, you can have it actually go out and query your cur too, so it can make sure that the cost actually makes sense versus just coming up with an estimation of $1 million, for example. Anyways, next one.
Just a quick note about that EBS snapshots thing was Vantage that brought us back to reality.
Yes. Thank you, Vantage, for keeping, had I connected into the MCP server for Vantage, it would have been smart enough to make that decision, one would think, or that choice in giving me $1 million savings opportunity. So, all right, next slide, please.
Well, appreciate the plug there. Really quickly, I'm so sorry. The chat is having technical difficulties. If you have any burning questions, feel free to raise your hand. I've noticed that Ricardo has a hand up if you want to jump on it. Maybe that was a hand up mistake.
Are they able to like come on and talk though? Like, do we have to grant them access to do so, or I'm not sure.
They should be able to.
I don't know if it's like listen only mode or whatever. So
Yeah, Ricardo, if you're trying to talk and you're unable to, please just mention that in the Q&A. Otherwise, we'll continue. But again, raise your hand if you have a question. I'll call on you and then just pop any Q&As for later in the chat or in the Q&A box.
thanks. Okay, so cost anomalies are everybody's favorite subject, right? We get an anomaly and it tells us that there is a cost difference compared to the baseline of however dollars or percentage or whatever you have it configured. And then you get to do the journey of trying to figure out what the heck caused it, and is this something that is worth reporting or talking to about. That can take hours. Like that could be like, hey, let me go dig into, okay, this EBS snapshot cost has increased by $100. Let me go figure out what account it's in and who, based on tag, and then get a ticket open, right? All that is relatively a manual process. But it's also a necessary evil because we definitely want to know about anything that is anomalous to what the normal day-to-day is and if it's supposed to be expected. What I came up with and thought about was like, oh my goodness, like how about we have an AI agent actually look at the anomalies that we get and come up with a what caused this anomaly and a plan of action to potentially address the anomaly. So what we have is, and we can go to the next slide, kind of an architecture diagram. So we are using AWS anomalies right now from AWS specifically. We do have multi-cloud and use Vantage for other providers as well. But AWS is quick to alert, we've found. And we've built out a process where it will, via Lambda, take the alert and then run it through an LLM, being on Bedrock. And then with the MCP server itself, it will, the Vantage MCP server, it will run it through to figure out the team and who it needs to talk to and the Slack channel and open a ticket and put it into the team's backlog for investigation, along with some information about, what may be causing it, which is good. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, that's a step above like having to manually go figure this stuff out on our own. But now we're going to give it more context with AWS CloudTrail. And again, like if you investigate anomalies, even with just Kiro, right? Say you get an anomaly and you want to go figure it out, and your account has the privilege to be able to figure or see like what has changed. I could have Kiro go figure out that, Johnny in our India office ran a job that caused a anomaly of cost, lasting for about 5 hours, and here is exactly what account it was running. Here's the command that it ran. If it has the context to see that type of information, the mean time to savings, as I quote my friend Lindbergh, is reduced because it can tell quickly, within minutes, what changed and what caused the anomaly and where it was caused by and who it was caused by. We are planning to put that into this anomaly detection as well. So it can tell who made these changes and what changed specifically. And if this was a data volume that changed, if this was customer traffic that increased and where it came from. Like that. That is the power of an AI agent. It takes us a long time as practitioners to figure out on our own, but we are automating that with agents. And that's really powerful. And I encourage you all to start to think that way. Like we have this technology in front of us now. Not everybody's using it, but I firmly believe this will be a huge part of the FinOps job in the future, amongst everything else. Software development, take a look at that as well, right? In some cases, Claude Code is writing new features for companies like Anthropic by itself. Engineers are not even writing code anymore. So that's a whole nother conversation for another day, but it is happening and transforming right in front of us right now. And so, yeah, well, you walk away with the final action that gives you a Slack message with a ticket that here's the expected cost, here's the region, here's the service, and here's the recent service. And we eventually will want to connect this into Atlassian tools because that's where we have Jira and we track, issues and also software change requests in, because then if it has more context, it can now understand that ticket number 123 caused this anomaly in production, right? That takes a lot of effort on our own to go figure out.
Mm.
And feel free to add anything, Will. I feel like I'm going to step down from my soapbox now, but
I think that's great. I mean, I would just, reiterate that like MCP servers are kind of the secret sauce behind this. When we were doing our initial forays into AI, a lot of what we were doing was strictly cost-based on making API calls to, Athena or what have you in order to retrieve cost-specific information. And that was okay. But, a big part of that workflow, we'll talk about this again in a little bit, is getting into the process of telling the agent how to do X. But MCP servers solve that problem for you because they theoretically, as long as the LLM has the ability to process it correctly, give you all that information right up front. So the LLM knows how to talk to the MCP server. The MCP server tells the LLM how to talk back to it, how to ask questions. And so when we're talking about the Vantage MCP server, it was super fast to plug in. Same thing with the CloudTrail MCP server, because each one of these different things really just gives you that information right up front, or gives the LLM that information right up front, so you have a lot less guesswork involved. If you wanted to plug in the Atlassian, it's going to function in the same core way. So, yeah, that was kind of my last little add on to that.
yeah, so here's an example. I will go ahead and talk it through.
Oh no, go for it.
Yeah, okay. So again, we talk about Slack a lot. Slack is our home base, but here's an example of what a ticket, yes, it'll open a ticket, but a finding will look like. And yes, believe me, you do have to curtail your anomaly detection. Otherwise, it is pretty noisy. So it totally depends on your organization and what you want to see. We do percentages for the most part, but we also do dollars. So it's not like completely everything. And it's not very specific to, sorry, it can be specific to our organization and it'll be specific to your organization as well. I would also say, like from an anomaly detection perspective, like yes, I said we use AWS anomaly detection. You certainly can use Vantage anomaly detection if you are a Vantage customer as well, right? It's basically replacing one with the other. We chose AWS just because it's faster. We like to get things a little bit earlier, and you'll get notified before like the cur updates is the change. But as we all know, everybody's working to make that time smaller so we can get notified faster.
Yeah. The next topic.
How has AI changed your life, Will?
So let's talk a little bit about how I started with Boomi. So I think I've been here about 4 years now, just under. When I first started with Boomi, my primary role was to come in and build automations, and we did it. We built a ton of automations, things to collect specific information and notify teams about that specific information. We updated an existing automation that had been built before to make it a little bit more streamlined, information a little bit more usable, and that was great. But as part of this process, and also as a FinOps engineer, I also sometimes help with product as well. There are times when there are specific tasks that seem well suited for a person in the FinOps department to go and code some specific thing in. What we do within FinOps, we've got 20 plus repos that we cover, at least 15 initiatives. That's a lot of code that we maintain. When I first started, it was a lot of handwriting and lots of going through. And I'm sure if you have any engineers that are on the call, they're all familiar with this. It's like half your time is spent staring at an IDE, the other half at Stack Overflow. That
That's
whole
how it used to
process,
be.
yeah,
Yeah.
that whole process is just gone.
Yeah.
Right now, as an engineer, I get to spend almost all of my time doing architecture work. So planning for big think items that we really couldn't even approach before. Because I have what is effectively this team of engineers, and really, it's AI that I can task with. Okay, here are the specific parameters around the code that we want to build. We have this example framework that we've already built. Incorporate these additional features into it, and then I could just go back at a later time, review that specific code, and make sure that it works the way that we expect it to, and that it is readable, so that some other human aside from me could come in and figure out what's happening. And that has made first things happen a lot faster. We have in the past 6 months or so gotten way more initiatives out the door than we could have done in a span of two years. So cuts our deploy time for individual initiatives from around 2 months down to about 2 or 3 weeks. It's not really an exaggeration. Most of that 2 to 3 weeks is spent just fine tuning the results that we're getting to make sure that that the LLM that is working on code is producing things that are actually usable, and the output is going to the right places. And then circling back with the individual engineering teams who are going to consume that output to make sure that it fits what it is that they need. So we,
Yeah, I think, and I'll just dive in, as I spoke about, engineering in general is changing, right? People are able to write a lot more lines of code now than they were even like a year or 2 years ago. Not to say that lines of code is the ultimate measurement, but it's the value that you get out of it. But I think, personally, I think in the next couple years, more code will be written by machine than human, and it won't even be close. So, we are also that example within Boomi. We definitely have adopted coding assistants, and it is writing a significant portion of our code now. And I'm sure you all are in the same boat too.
next slide, please. That all being said, yes, Boomi still needs a FinOps engineer. A lot of the time that I spend, I'm spending a lot of time as an architect at this point. But when I'm looking at IDEs right now, there are several significant things that IDEs are still struggling with a little bit. First is, Boomi is a varied configuration. We have a ton of different processes out there, different stack types. There are things that we have set up the way that we have set up for reasons that AI is not going to understand. And part of that is what my main function is as an engineer, is to go back to AI after it produces something and say, we're not doing it this way, we're doing it this way, and here's why. And then taking that information and feeding it back into whatever the IDE is, whether it's, like something that, can make use of Claude skills or things along those lines, so that it has that information for future work. We take that process, we make sure that, when we're writing code, it's streamlined and that we're updating the IDEs as we're going so that we have fewer and fewer of these conversations. But in addition to that, I still need to interact with engineers from other departments. I have to ask them questions about, hey, we're writing some code. The proposal is to do it this way, but we see that in these other examples, it's been done this way historically. Is there a specific reason for that? Because again, AI does not have that type of information about our processes until we give it to whether it's Claude Code Skills or Cursor with its own configuration files. Until we give it that particular type of information, it's not going to have it, and so we have to go and source that information to have those conversations and make sure that we're not doing something that's going to be incompatible with future releases. And
Yeah.
then, of course, spending time reviewing the code that it creates. It works almost exclusively in code bases that I'm, pretty familiar with, but there are a lot of times where it produces things that, still need some work. And so it becomes this conversation about how to get from the place where it is right now, where things don't work because it makes assumptions, to the place we need it to be, where everything functions the way that it is. And, that's great. Now, all of that process is further streamlined because after we've gone through all this process with the IDE or with, whatever it is that we're writing code in, we can then tell the IDE or Claude Code or Kiro or whatever it is to, okay, this is great. Now write a README about this whole thing, and it very accurately depicts everything that's going on, and how it is that it's getting through all of those processes and how you can make updates and all the other information that any engineer that follows me is going to need in order to be able to be successful if they're editing the same block of code. So it's not just about, we use those to write write descriptions about our initiatives that we're doing as well. So it's not just about the code itself. It's about being able to analyze all the things that it just did and, put out this great swath of information that's very human readable that explains effectively why the initiative exists, why it's important, what it is that the steps are going to look like, what the output is going to look like, so that anyone who's following along at a later time, can get that. And these are things that I had to do in the past, and it's great. I have spent a fair bit of time as a tech writer. I don't mind doing it, but we have a lot of initiatives and we want to be able to get to them faster. And this is where, this is really being a huge help. So, okay.
Yeah, just to add another thing, like we mentioned Claude's skills, like one of the aspirations we have is to turn FinOps knowledge into skills for our engineers to be able to reuse and have that skill, kind of shifted left. So that'll be coming in the future as well.
Awesome. So, Grinchbot. Grinchbot is one of my favorite tools, but it's probably also one of the more dated at this point. We built Grinchbot initially more than a year ago now, and it was initially conceived as a standard Slack chatbot that you could ask questions about your cost and get answers. And the initial iteration of that it was good. But it was based on some fairly old technology, or at least what now would be considered archaic technology, where it's, here's an LLM, here's retrieval augmented generation to tell it, how to interact with all these different sources. And here is the primary data source that we wanted to interact with. And we built it, it worked well, but then these really great things called MCP servers came in. So
Yeah, and the Grinchbot was only like a year and a half old now, I think. So it's not even that old.
it's a dinosaur in technology.
Yeah, that Grinchbot, man. Yeah.
We Vantage came out very, very early on with the MCP server, and we immediately jumped on that and just plugged it straight into Grinchbot, and we haven't looked back. We are using Grinchbot to effectively collect all kinds of different data around questions about what types of resources are out there, what's generating the most cost. Every single member on our team can go into Slack channels and just ask Grinchbot, hey, what's going on with X? And we've gotten some good responses. I mean, I think people are getting good use out of it. So
Yep. And then Vantage stole our thunder and came out with the Vantage bot in which you can ask it to do more.
yeah.
I don't. Sorry, go ahead.
I love the Vantage bot. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's a great tool. It is easily I wouldn't say uh, cooperation. If there's a combination between cooperation and competition with GrinchBot, at least internally, uh, the Vantage bot is great. It also has some additional benefits if you have automation enabled. I believe that you can do specific automation specific things such as stage XX for getting to a place where it will be turned off at a certain time, things along those lines. But we're primarily using the Vantage agent to ask exactly the same types of questions we were doing with GrinchBot. And a lot of times, the data that we're asking, if I'm asking Vantage a question, it's because I just asked GrinchBot and I want to validate that I'm getting the same response. And they've been pretty aligned so far. I am looking forward to the future development that comes with the Vantage agent because I actually would very much like to retire GrinchBot at this point.
Yeah.
We're able to plug additional MCP servers into it, so we may keep it around because we can ask it to do things like, oh, well, go check Atlassian and see if there's been any updates to this particular repository. But currently, because again, engineers living in Slack, living in Jira, having these tools that specifically they can interact with where they live has been a huge benefit to them. So.
Yeah, I like the report building functionality. So I don't have to build reports by hand. I just ask it a question now and it'll go out and build a report for me. That helps quite a bit. It definitely saves time.
I
Well,
think
thank you guys. I think are we at the end?
I have
Yeah,
nothing else to.
We can talk
great.
for hours though. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Anybody have? I see there's some questions out there.
yeah. There's some questions, so I'll throw them over to y'all. I think the first one was you were saying the word Kiro. Is that Kiro? Is that the
Yeah,
correct
this
spelling
is
there?
AWS's, I guess they're like coding assistant. It used to be Q. I think Q still exists, but now there's a Kiro there too. I use it from like the CLI perspective. It's really easy to set up, like very, very simple. So I highly
Got it.
recommend just starting there.
And
And if
on the
you,
oh, go ahead.
I would say if your organization is not doing centralized CloudTrail logging for AWS, you probably want to look into that because with Kiro, with centralized logging, you could just plug Kiro into the main centralized logging organization and query about the entire account rather than having to have access to every single individual thing. And since it's just looking at CloudTrail logging, there's minimal risk involved. So.
Your security posture mileage may vary. I just want to throw that out there. Yeah.
And on the anomaly detection side, are you finding it overly noisy? Any false positives, or is it actually pretty good?
Uh, so there are definitely false positives. We have things that happen once a month, and it almost always flags those. We have been gradually, like with the AWS anomaly detection, you can tell in AWS, yes, this is an anomaly, but yes, it's also expected, and it will stop flagging those. You could also tell it if it's a false positive. We get far fewer false positives, a lot more, yes, it was an anomaly, but yes, it's also expected. And we usually just flag those in AWS's UI, and then we stop getting notified about them. It's not 100%, and for the most part, we've got systems built up that can help manage those things or mitigate them. So,
Yeah,
And
we also
oh,
like
good.
in anomaly alerts, like thanks to Will, like we build charts as well, excuse me. So as part of the Slack message, like you can see like how much it differs from where it was typically. That helps just to give like an eyeball check on it too. Like, oh, this thing really jumped, or oh, this barely moved. Let me ignore the one that barely moved.
And that anomaly from AWS, is that based off of CloudTrail, or they're doing just quick billing calculations before the curve's available?
I think it's the latter. I've
Yeah.
never been able
Okay.
to get a definitive. We talked to AWS a couple of times about it, and I think it's the latter. It doesn't seem to trigger based on strictly activity, more based on this is definitely some sort of cost, and then evaluating where that cost is going to be generated. I think it's just that they have earlier access to the cost data than other. Then it gets written out to curve files. So.
Got it. Cool. Um, I had a few questions for you all. Have you done any testing between the different models and have any performed better than others just in the context of FinOps or understanding infrastructure in general?
Yeah, we have. It's not been extensive. A lot of the testing was in different generations of the same model. We have used a couple of different models, but almost invariably when we have done testing of different things, we keep landing on variations on Claude as being the thing that gets us the best benefit. Even evaluating, Titan and some of the others that are AWS native, like Nova Pro, I think, or Nova Pro.
Yep.
Um, Most of what we've found is that we get the best benefit by sticking with Anthropic for now, and we'll keep evaluating these things as time goes on. But it's been depending upon the number of tokens that are needed, the different models based on what tokens are the number of tokens that are needed and what type of data is being processed. So I mean, it's usually Haiku or Sonnet, nothing more extensive than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Josh read my mind, both putting our FinOps hats on. Like, what have you seen the cost for running this infrastructure be?
Ah,
Minimal. Yeah. Do you
yeah.
have the exact details, Will?
So we do evaluations on a pretty continual basis. We have an alerting system in Vantage that lets us know if any of our costs that we're doing based off of this work exceeds a certain amount. You can just do that within reporting and then set up alerts with thresholds. So far, those thresholds have not been met. We on days where the testing is really fairly extreme, like we're evaluating, say, the agentic waste discovery, and we're testing 10, 15 times over the course of a day across all of our different teams. The average price has been about $20. It's not significant. I think that in the grand scheme of things, the amount of data that we are passing through it seems large, but as far as the LLMs that we're working with, they don't seem to complain or really think of it as being any significant workload at all. So it's been not significant.
Cool. And uh, next question I had is like, where do you want to be 12 months from now? Like, what's your dream end state?
Uh, I look at
That's,
this.
yeah,
Yeah,
go
you want to
ahead.
carry that one?
Yeah, I'll go. Just looking ahead, like we've seen how far AI agents have come in just like a year. I think that trend is going to continue. And I really want to fully adopt the Claude skills to enable all of our dev teams to really have a better picture of things just as they're writing code at the source, right? Or as Claude is writing code at its source. It'll be aware of the FinOps capabilities right from the beginning. Basically, I want to automate as much functionality as we're doing manually into full automation AI agents. So, we can focus on more meta, like expanding and growing more business and things like that. But, this is where the industry is heading. Look at reInvent this past year, right? It
Hmm.
was all about agentic AI. So I encourage everybody here to figure out how you can have some sort of AI agent, whether it's Q or Kiro or I guess Copilot in Azure. Figure out how you can use that to do something that you're normally manually doing on your own, because you will free yourself up more to work on bigger problems.
Any final questions before we close out?
I think there's still the architecture diagram and code sample
Oh,
question. So that
yes.
that's for us, Will. I think we can talk about like high level what we're doing, but we're not gonna be able to share. We're not planning to open source like what we've built. But Nick, if you want to have a conversation, just send me a Slack message in the FinOps Foundation as well. We can have a conversation there.
Definitely.
Well, thank you both for taking the time today and putting this together. You've been great design partners as we've been developing out our offerings, and what you've built is really impressive. And if anyone's interested in chatting further, you can join the Vantage Community Slack or sign up for a demo. And like Eric said, if you're in the FinOps Foundation Slack channel, feel free to reach out to him.